Welcome, you're watching Head to Head. I'm Antonina Antosha with UATV. On the 6th of December, Ukraine celebrates Armed Forces Day. This holiday was established 27 years ago, right after gaining Ukrainian independence. But for decades, Ukrainian Army was not in its best shape. After Russia's annexation in Crimea and armed aggression in Donbas, Ukrainian Armed Forces had to be rebuilt almost from the scratch. The process proved to be successful. Today, Ukrainian armed forces are ranked among the strongest armies in Europe. To talk more about this, we're joined in the studio today by Colonel Oleksiy Nozdrachov. He is the head of the Department of Civil Military Cooperation of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Hello, and thank you for being with us today.
Good afternoon.
So first of all, let me congratulate you on the upcoming holiday. And second of all, let's talk about the process of rebuilding the Ukrainian army. I know that there was a need and there was a necessity, but still, the process proved to be very successful due to what?
Well, frankly, let me dive to history of the birthday of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. As you mentioned, 6th of December 1991, the Ukrainian parliament passed two laws. The first law was the Ukrainian Armed Forces law, and the second law was the Ukrainian defense law. So this is legal basis for independent Ukraine to create and sustain Ukrainian armed forces. And just to highlight the size and scope of the Ukrainian armed forces, let me bring a couple of details of Ukrainian armed forces 1991. First of all, Ukrainian armed forces had third biggest nuclear arsenal in the world. And we're talking about around 200 intercontinental nuclear missiles, around 50 strategic bombers, and around 500 cruise missiles, which is probably even much more than most of the European armies together have today.
That is really impressive.
Yes, and this is just a strategic forces available for Ukrainian armed forces. And then we're talking about almost 10,000 tanks and APCs. We're talking about almost 500 aircraft. And we're talking about almost 500,000 of Ukrainian military personnel. So this huge and very expensive capability of Ukrainian armed forces, unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, were cascaded down during more than 20 years. And talking about the military budget, in 1992, the military budget was almost 10% of the state GDP. And if we're talking about the bottom line of Ukrainian armed forces in 2013, it was less than 1%. So you can see this almost military strategy of so-called reformation of Ukrainian armed forces. And of course, this is why 2014 is the new stage of Ukrainian armed forces development. The history tells us that the development of Ukrainian armed forces had the fourth stage. The first stage from 1991 to 96, it was creation of bases of Ukrainian armed forces. The huge forces.
Exactly, right after getting the Ukrainian independence.
Right. And we're talking about creating the command and control structure, legal basis, and the most important what the state wanted from Ukrainian armed forces. And as you said, the bad shape of Ukrainian armed forces in 2014 for those for the situation of 2014, not because armed forces failed in its reformation. It's because the people and the parliament and the presidents before told us that we have Budapest Agreement, so we have
and
the
we're
world
safe, basically.
Right, we are safe. So our main goal is to have something to participate in peacekeeping missions. And Ukraine has started participation since 1992. And in the middle of 2000, Ukraine was the biggest contributor to peacekeeping missions around the world, a European country. So we're talking about almost like 5 or up to 10,000 military personnel deployed at the same time around the world. So the parliament and the heads of states told us we need armed forces for these particular missions. So this is why, of course, we did not expect aggression of second biggest armed forces in the world in 2014, and the Russian Federation was preparing for this war since decades before the war started. So this is why in 2014 the huge amount of resources and capability was reborn and redeveloped, and we're talking about creation more than 20 brigades. We're talking about mobilization around 200,000 military personnel within the year or so. So I would say no country in the world, particularly no country in Europe, could do that in so short period of time, and no resources, and unfortunately no alliance in 2014. We still are fighting in this war with support of our partners, but we are still not the members of any alliance, and we don't have any allies, officially speaking. So this is why this is huge push of Ukrainian people, Ukrainian leadership and Ukrainian military personnel, and I'm talking about the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Ukrainian National Guard, and other elements of Ukrainian defense. They almost rebuild the country, rebuild the armed forces by their hands within the hours, days, and months. So I would say even this the episode of redevelopment of Ukrainian armed forces and all elements of Ukrainian defense in 2014. This is heroic event, and I don't think any country in Europe still is able to repeat such push which Ukraine did in 2014.
So what happens next?
Well, next we have to finish the war. We have to...
do we have to put an end to it, or do we have to do it in a diplomatic way?
I would say this is a very tricky question, probably not to me as appropriate representative of the Ukrainian Armed Forces.
Okay.
A diplomatic way is the most preferable, because the Ukrainian soldier will be the citizen who will shed his blood in the war. So of course we are, as Ukrainian Armed Forces, we support the President and the Parliament initiatives to finish the armed conflict within political and diplomatic framework. But Ukrainian forces right now, as you mentioned, is one of the strongest European army, and we will be ready for both scenarios. But of course, for people of Ukraine, for Ukrainian economy, and for lives of our soldiers, diplomatic and political frameworks are the priority.
How high is the necessity, how big is the necessity of keeping the Ukrainian army at the same level of strength it is right now after the war is over?
I would say probably for the nearest future, for short and for middle period of time, to make sure the situation in the region is safe enough. But of course, I hope Ukrainian people will not be blind anymore like they were before 2014, and we will keep our armed forces mobile, high-tech developed, and interoperable with NATO. And of course, the future of Ukrainian armed forces, as Ukraine will be part of North Atlantic Alliance and the European Union. So, and this is a very significant challenge, taking into account that the country is in a war, and I think it will take decades to achieve it.
Would you say that right now it is really prestigious to be a part of Ukraine's armed forces? Because in the 90s, most of the youngsters who were mobilized, not mobilized, but who were called to serve their country, tried to escape serving in the army. And right now, a lot of people are actually volunteer to join the number of the soldiers who are serving Ukraine at this uneasy time. So would you say it became more prestigious to be in Ukrainian army right now?
Right, but I would say the 90s and beginning of 2000s, the prestige of Ukrainian armed forces was low because of failure of the state education and patriotic education. So we as the country and we as the people of Ukraine, we were absolutely confident that it's going to be no war and why our sons and daughters should serve in the armed forces. But the God bless Ukraine and people of Ukraine 2014, the young men and women and elders, they join Army and Air Force and Navy to save the country. And I think now government is doing right things to recover the patriotic education, to recover the positive image of Ukrainian Armed Forces. And it has not only ideological part, it has even bigger the budget and sustainment and support. So now our country understands that the Ukrainian Armed Forces and other elements of defense, they are backbone of this country. And we will be backbone of this country for decades ahead, unfortunately. But we always will be neighbors with Russian Federation, and this historical threat will be always in place, and Ukrainian Armed Forces will always play the major role in protection, defense of Ukrainian territory and Ukrainian society.
On the 6th of December, the Day of Ukraine's Armed Forces, any special events planned for those soldiers who are on the front line right now?
Well, absolutely. Of course, I don't think it will be any big parties, but,
well, of course. Sure.
But taking into account that those of us who now are serving in the first line in joint operation Donetsk-Lugansk, they deserve some recognition and appreciation, not only from the military command, but from the rest people. And I hope the media of Ukraine and commanders on the field will create some possibility to provide some time for rest. But Ukraine is in an armed conflict, and no opportunity should be given to our enemies, even during the birthday of Ukrainian Armed Forces.
Thank you so much for coming.
Always welcome.
That was Colonel Oleksiy Nozdrachov. He is the head of the Department of Civil Military Cooperation of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned with UATV.